Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you, and I want to start by thanking the PSPS leadership team for having me here today. In 1971, John Lennon asked us to imagine a world that was different. Now, I want you to imagine a world where managers and employees are energized by performance conversations, not depleted by them. Imagine having a process that enables performance instead of judging it. And imagine having a performance enablement process that acts as a tailwind to your organization, pushing you forward rather than a headwind holding you back. This future is very important because today, when performance management fails, it doesn't just go away, right? It moves. It moves into confusion, into frustration, and disengagement, and eventually it lands with you. Because you're not just managing a process, you're managing the damage that it creates. And it's very helpful if I get my clicker. There we go. So let's ground ourselves in some of the reality that we have been facing today. I know many of you have seen these statistics before. 95% of managers are dissatisfied with the process. Only 21% of employees believe that they get feedback that actually makes a difference for them. And recent research from Deloitte tells us that 75%, their organizations believe 75% of companies say their leaders cannot accurately evaluate individual performance. Now let's see by a raise of hands, how many of you think your managers can accurately evaluate individual performance? What do you think? Okay, you guys, I'm not seeing any hands, so you're either asleep or this is a big problem for us.
So I'm going to say not yet.
Not yet. That is a fundamental problem. So we need to find a way to fix this process that has been nagging us that is a real thorn in your side, I would argue. So we have this process that's not working, and the question is kind of why is it not working? And while there are a ton of reasons why performance management does not work, I think there is one fundamental underlying thing that we need to focus on. And now we're not working. There you go. The world has changed, and performance management simply isn't aligned anymore. So we operate as if we have stable jobs and well-defined job responsibilities. And we set goals at the beginning of the year, assuming that they're still going to be the most relevant and critical priorities at the end of the year. But the truth of the matter is we operate in a constantly changing business environment. You guys have all heard the terms before, VUCA, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Those words have never been more relevant than they are today. And your organizations need to be agile. They need to be able to pivot to that next opportunity or deal with that challenge that they're facing. And our skill sets are constantly changing in our business environment. So constant growth and development is absolutely critical. We used to operate with really traditional hierarchical organization structures with low spans of control. I would say, in general, managers had 3 to 7 direct reports, and we were all co-located, right? So management by walking around was a real thing. But today, we operate in flatter organization with larger spans of control. So it was 3 to 7 direct reports, now it's 7 to 10 direct reports, and sadly, I have heard 25 and 30, which I do not recommend, but that is the reality of today. And of course, we operate in a globally distributed environment. Our work used to be primarily production-based, and when performance management was first created, those were the kinds of jobs that we created it for. But today, only 27% of jobs are production-based, and 60% of jobs are knowledge-based. with the rest of the jobs being in the service sector. As a consequence of this difference, jobs, it used to be that individual effort produced a particular outcome. But today, because of the type of work that we do, the complexity of the work, the environment that we operate in, it often takes a team to get something done. And that might be within your team, it might even be across teams about how we get work done. So our work today is far more complex. And we have to manage for that new world. Now, to set the stage and to help me think about this, back in 2020, my co-author and I, as we began to think about writing this book, we set out to do some research. So we ultimately surveyed 113 practitioners. They were CHROs, heads of talent management, or heads of performance management. And we asked them, what is the purpose of performance management, right? That was kind of, we thought, we really need to step back and think about this question. What is the purpose of performance management in your company? And so we asked these practitioners, what purpose does performance management serve in your organization today? And that's what you see here in the blue bar. And you can see it's primarily to evaluate employees to pay for performance. And then we asked them, what do you think performance management should do? And we got a very different answer, and that's what you see in the green. And what was really interesting is the bigger the company, the bigger the difference between how it was designed and what they thought it should be. So here you see people think it's primarily should be about driving and improving performance, and secondarily around providing feedback to help people learn and grow. So I propose to you, in the same research, we also asked those practitioners, what part of the process, if any, is responsible for disengaging and demotivating employees? Now, you won't be surprised to learn that 65% of them said it was the evaluation process. Yet, for a majority of companies, the purpose of the process is to evaluate employees to pay for performance. So we focus on ratings and our calibration sessions. Yet, I already heard from you that managers aren't very good at this process of rating employees, their individual performance. So we need to find a new way. And I propose to you that the purpose worth pursuing here is performance enablement. It's a process that focuses on enabling individual and organizational performance for progress and performance. Now, some of you in here might be feeling a little cautiously optimistic at this point. Maybe we have found a right path forward. By the end of this session, you will understand the importance of this paradigm shift and why we need to shift to performance enablement. So you recall that nobody here, the question, okay, let me back up. How many of you believe that your current process is really designed to pay for performance? Your current process is designed to pay for performance. I see a number of shy and reticent hands.
So it's not an all or nothing thing, though. Can't both of those things happen simultaneously?
Well, this is what I would argue. I would argue that as you think about what purpose best serves your company today, you need to design for the process that is your purpose. And the design of these two systems are different. And that is kind of the fundamental essence that I want to get at today, which is if you design your system to pay for performance, you get a very different system than if you're designing strictly to drive individual and organizational performance. And this clicker is slow. So performance management is part of what we call a management control system. Now, people don't like the term control system, but management control system is not a bad thing. It just simply means it's a system that tries to move your organization along in a particular direction. Just like organization strategy and organization structure are also part of a management control system. Now, there are two types of management control systems. There's a coercive control system and an enabling control system. Performance management and pay for performance are classic symbols of a coercive control strategy. And these strategies are the dominant features in most organizations and even in most research. We use that coercive control system. So even though coercive control is the dominant model that most people operate under, I argue that it's not working. It's not working because work has changed and workers have changed. So there are some common features of a coercive control model, right? They tend to be formalized, codified, a little bureaucratic, and they tend to limit action or response and flexibility within the organization. So we set goals at the beginning of the year to use as a measuring stick for performance at the end of the year. And we don't change goals in the middle of the year because those goals end out being kind of a contract between managers and employees about how that employee is going to get paid at the end of the year. So coercive control models have at their very assumption that employees will not work hard unless you're holding something over their head, the threat of reward or possibility of punishment. You are to seek your approval and avoid your disapproval. So it really becomes a system of carrots and sticks. And extrinsic rewards like pay are kind of a core feature of an enabling, of a coercive control model. And I want you to think about the last time that perhaps you had to argue for a rating that you wanted to get an employee because you wanted to get them a certain pay increase. Or think about a time that you had to deal with a manager who was frustrated and upset because your pay for performance program and your rating system put them in a very uncomfortable situation, right? We can all relate to these kinds of situations. We need to shift to a new way of working. And these coercive control models are, they have been operating in a certain manner, and we thought that they would be successful, but they haven't been very successful in the past. And the research tells us that these models can often negatively impact employee engagement and performance. Here we go. Here we go. Now too fast. Okay. This research is from David Rock and his colleagues. You might have seen this before because it's been around for a little while, but I think it's a perfect example of what is happening here. David Rock is well known for his SCARF model that tells us that traditional performance management structures kind of create a fear response within employees. David did this research with my colleague and co-author, Alan Colquette at Eli Lilly, because at the time, Alan was the head of performance management at Eli Lilly. And what you see here is at Lilly, they did an employee engagement pulse survey every single month. So what you see here is engagement over time. And when they looked at this data longitudinally, they found something really interesting. They found that directly after the rating process and when people got their pay announcements, engagement dropped within the organization for 85% of the organization. Anyone who got a 1 through a 4 rating in their performance management system, engagement dropped. And it didn't just drop for a little bit, it dropped for 3 to 4 months. Now here's the problem. At Eli Lilly, they had already made the connection between employee engagement and organizational productivity. So their leaders were very concerned about this data, and it actually created their business case for eliminating ratings in their process because they were concerned about the impact on employee engagement. So as I said in the beginning, for many companies, the main purpose of performance management is for managers to rate employees at the end of the process. And the problem with this is that we have decades of research that tells us that maybe not only might it negatively impact engagement, but managers aren't very good at accurately evaluating individual performance. And there are a whole host of reasons about why manager ratings may not be accurate. In our research, 2/3 of practitioners said that factors other than performance influence ratings to some extent or to a great extent. So what are some of these things that influence ratings, right? Prior performance sets up an expectation about performance. This is actually my doctoral dissertation. When you violate somebody's performance expectations, you get over-rewarded or over-punished. So if I think you're a great employee and all of a sudden something happens, you're a little wonky, I would rate you even lower than I would have had that lower performance just come about. And also, if you were kind of an average employee, but all of a sudden, right before the performance rating period, you did something great, I would rate you even higher than you deserved because it violated my expectations. Forced distributions. That's another thing that influences the accuracy of a rating because we can only give out so many 4s and 5s, right? So not necessarily accurate. Where somebody is in their pay band, whether or not they have leadership potential, whether or not they're a retention risk, all those factors could influence somebody's rating. And let's not forget about how much their manager likes them. So manager ratings have a huge signal to noise ratio problem. So the good news about thinking about performance management as a management control system is there is an alternative to coercive control, which is enabling control. And enabling control strategies have been around for a very long time, but they're just not generally used in organizations for control purposes. Enabling control strategies are grounded in a different set of principles and beliefs about human behavior. Things about intrinsic motivation, the importance of trust and transparency and direction for employees. So the question is, how do we use this lens of enabling control to fundamentally change from performance management to performance enablement? Well, the first thing that we can do is we can create a lighter process. We can do something more informal. We don't have to have heavy documentation because the purpose of the process isn't to justify ratings. We can provide more guidance and support and information to our employees so that they understand what they're supposed to be working on and why they're working on and what success looks like. We can give employees greater trust and accountability and responsibility, and then we can encourage them to strive to reach very, very challenging goals. Enabling control is grounded in transparency, helping employees understand why they're working on these goals and not those goals, why decisions are being made within the organization, why rules or policies exist within the organization. And it creates a process that is much more flexible so that people can adapt. They can change their actions or their priorities. They can change their goals as business needs change. And this is really important given our complex business environments today where things shift. And then, of course, importantly, enabling control is grounded in intrinsic motivation. Helping employees lean into that sense of accomplishment or making an impact versus only thinking that employees will be motivated by extrinsic rewards like pay. So you can see here that enabling control relies more on social and psychological mechanisms. We don't just work hard to get paid or avoid punishment. Work satisfies deeper social and psychological needs for us. Decades of research tells us that employees want purpose and meaning at work. They want to be trusted and be accountable. They want a sense of belonging. So helping them connect to the team and focus on that team is very important. They also want to grow their skills. They want to grow their mastery and their competence. So career growth is very motivating for employees. So we're moving really from the system of performance management from an annual review process that's really focused on managers evaluating performance to a performance enablement approach that is more continuous, that is focused on growth and enablement, where the manager serves as a coach. And that manager role is really there to be a facilitator for individual and team performance so that they can achieve more than they ever could before. Yes, in an AI-driven world, that manager being a coach is really important because it is those human conversations that are really the lever to unlock performance. But it can be AI-enabled, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So my co-author Alan and I came up with this model to describe what we mean by performance enablement. At the very foundation is setting the business context, providing guidance and direction to help people understand what they're working on and why they're working on it. And that why is so important because it ties to purpose. It helps people understand and gives them purpose in their work. And with that guidance and direction in place, they can then set specific challenging goals. And with those in place, then the manager's job is to provide coaching and feedback and feed forward. A process that does not rely on critiquing the past, but using those past experiences to help guide the employee forward. And then, of course, managers are responsible for providing support to their employees, removing barriers, making connections across the business, or getting them the tools or resources that they need to be successful. And then the final element we have here is development. And development is a critical part of the process for today's business world because companies grow long-term through the development of their people. This can't be something we think of afterwards or something that's not really part of this process. Development is absolutely critical to growing the capability of individuals, teams, and the organization. So with these elements in place, we have greater alignment in the organization because people understand the goals that they're working on and why they're working on those goals. We have greater motivation because people are connected both to purpose and through those goals, and then they make progress on those goals. And then we build increased capability through coaching, feedback, support, and development. And this spiral, this upward spiral that you see in the model is very, very intentional. It's drawn from Barbara Fredrickson's work in positive psychology. We believe that with these elements in place, they will lift your organization up, and it will create a positive forward momentum that will drive performance, and it kind of acts as a flywheel over time because the positive nature of this process. So in our book, we talk about 8 performance management principles, and we break them into 3 different chapters. So here's what I want to leave you with. For decades, we have built performance management systems based on fundamentally flawed assumptions. That people perform best when they're controlled, measured, and rewarded or punished accordingly. So we built systems with ratings and rankings and pay-for-performance systems in the hopes that they would drive performance forward. But the research says they don't. They do not unlock performance. They constrain it. They create caution instead of courage, compliance instead of commitment, and all too often disengagement rather than energy. So the question in front of us is not whether or not we need to improve performance management. The question is whether we're ready to let go of the belief systems that it was built upon. Because performance does not come from pressure. It comes from progress. It comes from purpose. It comes from people who feel supported and trusted and enabled to do their very best work. And that's what performance enablement is all about. It's about a shift from managing performance to enabling it. From critiquing the past to driving the future forward. From a system designed to control us to one designed to unleash us. And that is not a small change. It requires all of us as HR leaders to rethink what drives human behavior, to redesign the systems that we have inherited, and to have the courage to challenge practices that no longer serve us. But the payoff is profound, because when you get this right, you don't just improve performance. You create an organization where people are aligned, growing, energized, and moving forward together. So my final question is, are you designing a process that measures performance or one that makes performance possible? Because the future of work will not be led by companies that manage performance better. It will be led by companies that enable people to perform their best. And that shift starts with all of you. So thank you.